Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak in support of the amendment. But first I want to talk about both what this committee and what this Congress is doing to the rule of law. Earlier this week, we witnessed the spectacle of the highest-ranking Republican in the country, the Speaker of the House, someone in line for the presidency, standing outside a Manhattan courthouse in a hush money payment to a porn star trial, vouching for the good moral character of the defendant. Now, I would imagine if you asked a younger Mike Johnson some 10 or 15 years ago, could you ever imagine you would stand outside of a courthouse in a hush money payment to a porn star trial and vouch for the moral character of the defendant? He would never imagine that possible. But like the proverbial frog in the boiling pot, what we have seen, not just with the Speaker, but with so many of the Republican leadership over the last several years, is one surrender of moral authority after another surrender, one betrayal of what one once stood for, followed by another betrayal, followed by another, until you find yourself standing outside of a Manhattan courthouse, vouching for the moral authority and character of someone who possesses none. And not just losing yourself and losing any sense of right and wrong in the process, but here denigrating the very institution of justice, making the false claims, the patently false claims that this trial in Manhattan was somehow about keeping Donald Trump off the campaign trail, something the Speaker knows is patently false, but willing to repeat. And this is where we are, where our highest-ranking official, Republican official, is essentially telling the American people, don't trust our system of justice. Don't trust the rule of law. And here in this committee, we see something very similar. We see a Republican U.S. attorney brought on to investigate the president. We see him make a report to this Congress that there is nothing prosecutable in what he was able to find. We see him at the same time failing to make a prosecutable case, deciding the next best thing he can do is lob a political grenade in his report and politically belittle the president. And we see this committee unable, after months and months and millions of dollars to make any kind of an impeachable case, decide to follow Mr. Hur's tainted example. We can't make a case for any impeachment. There is no high crime. There is no misdemeanor even. And so we will do the next best thing, and we will use this to political advantage by subpoenaing tapes of an interview we already have the transcript for. And why? Because the Republicans in this committee have moved from being the criminal defense firm for the president to being essentially an adjunct of the president's media advertising firm. They want the video for Donald Trump's campaign commercials. That's where this committee has become, the Committee on the Judiciary, the committee that is centered or supposed to be centered on the rule of law and on justice. And what are we doing? We're holding the Attorney General of the United States in contempt. And for what? Because he won't give video material for a campaign commercial to this committee on behalf of a president who is a criminal defendant in a hush money payment to a porn star case in New York, the first of many criminal trials that he will face. This is where we are. This is where we are. I first joined this committee, now it's been over 20 years ago. And I suppose like a young Mike Johnson, I could have never imagined this committee would engage in such a thing. It's not as if 20 years ago this committee was some bastion of bipartisan comity. It wasn't. We might and did disagree on abortion and on guns and on the whole host of other policy issues. But I don't think any Democrat or Republican on this committee would have ever imagined it would be brought so low as to hold an attorney general in contempt because it can't get a video for a campaign commercial when it was already given the transcript. But this is where we are. And I think just day after day, moment after moment, year after year, we lose sight of how far we have fallen and any sense of what we are supposed to be about in this committee. And I don't imagine anything I have to say is going to change that, but I do think every now and then the country needs to be reminded that there is nothing okay about this, there's nothing right about this, there's nothing normal about this. We need to get back to demonstrating some devotion to our constituents and the rule of law. And with that, I yield back.